So the one that we are recommending is Parent Square, and that one there is a little bit of a higher cost in year one due to that implementation. But as you can see, their implementation cost was significantly lower than all of the other companies as well. And with that is because they have everything built into this one platform that truly is comprehensive of a platform. So this will be our mass communication system, which does our current, like we have now, a phone, text, and email that we send out one mass way. It will have two-way text messaging that our teachers and coaches can use, both with parents and students. And that one, what is nice with Parent Square is they actually purchased Remind, so it functions exactly like Remind does, which is something that I think a lot of us are already used to using as a platform with other different organizations that we're involved in. But because there's a lot of other companies that they had the two-way messaging, but parents or students would have to download an app in order to see those messages. With Parent Square, you get the choice that it would come in as a text message, or you can also see those in a parent app as well. And then we would have our websites, and then also when we're doing messaging, we could do newsletters that functions a lot like our SMORE newsletters, so like our Badger Update that currently goes out, that's a SMORE newsletter in our school newsletters. So right now we only have SMORE for 10 users. With this, every teacher or principal and secretary would be able to do newsletters in that same way. So I think that kind of helps with that consistency across levels as well, for when our parents and their kids transition from elementary to middle, from middle to high, are used to that same type of consistency with that communication. And then the last piece, like I said, was the websites. So all of our websites would switch to a new platform as well. But what's nice with that, being connected, when they send a newsletter out, they click a button and it automatically goes to the website. So it makes it a lot easier and less people involved too with updating.
I wanted to just add on the two-way messaging. So I think Stacey called that text messaging. Obviously, it's through their app. It's two-way, instantaneous. If I'm a coach, I want to send something out to all the players or whatever, and they could respond back right away. Those would all be documented. That'd all be districts. We could access everything that's ever communicated through this. And so it functions the exact same as an email or anything else, even though it's instantaneous two-way messaging. So the security side of that.
Is it based on number of users? So for example, as we grow, will that cost remain stagnant, or is that going to increase over time?
Yes, so right now with the one that we have selected was Parent Square, we worked with them to actually do a multi-year contract to see if I could get a discount. And so we did. So at a 3-year one, they lock us in that price per student for 3 years with the ability to extend that to 5 years. So we have the ability to stay at that price for 5 years.
Nice. Thanks.
And you can see on there part of the cost difference. And for reference, we're paying just over $14,550 right now for all the different apps that perform these same services. And so it is going from about $14,500 up to $18,200, $18,300. Once you get to year 2, the implementation is kind of a one-time cost, obviously, to get everything integrated over, which, you know, is an increase, but then we're going to lock that in for 3 to 5 years, and so it, you know, that's how those contracts work.
But I also think the benefit, just ease of usability between everybody, that you don't have to go, now this is Messenger, now this is SMORE, now this is the website, now this is this, that it makes sense for versatility anyway.
Because I mean, for our secretaries and for myself, when we send our SMORE newsletters, when it's in the body of the email, you don't just create the email right there and click send. You have to copy source code and paste it in and make sure it formats, and then, so there's a lot more steps and a little bit more complicated, to where with it all being in one, it will be a lot easier and less steps for people.
Good.
Sometimes I need to be reminded those newsletters and information that go out and how pretty they look. That doesn't just happen. There's some work that goes into it. So appreciate Stacey and all of our building administrative assistants that it's a little bit of a process to get something changed. So.
And like I said with the SMORE, we only have 10 licenses that we currently pay for. So like our teachers, especially our elementary, they love pretty newsletters. And they love to use like Canva or like anything like that. And you have to have a license to do the SMORE newsletters. And so with this, we don't have to pay for additional licenses. That newsletter platform to create those is built right into this, which also can incorporate Canva. So we're getting more for what we're paying for as well.
Any more questions? All right. I move to approve the 3-year agreement between Bennington Public Schools and Parent Square as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Christie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes. Motion approved. All right, on to our last piece here. Discuss, consider, and take action on BPS certified staff appraisal document.
Good evening, Shannon Tyndall, Director of Elementary Education. And thank you, Tim, for noticing that I'm the last thing between you guys and the beautiful weather out there. So I will try to be concise.
It's all good. It's all good.
All right, I'm here tonight to present on the Bennington instructional model and seek approval of an updated appraisal framework for our teachers. And so this revision process began in the winter of 2023, about 2 years ago, and it was prompted by an initiative by the state of Nebraska to make sure that every student had access to a highly qualified educator. And also, we hadn't revisited our appraisal system since 2018, so we thought it was time to do some updates. And so we developed a committee of 24 representatives, which included classroom teachers and specialists, building administrators, and district administrators. And we started the process by auditing our current appraisal system, making sure that it aligned to Nebraska Rule 10 and what our expectations were as a district for teacher evaluation and our board policy. And then we did some background work on different research and evidence-based practices. We looked at the Nebraska Teacher and Principal Performance Standards, Marzano's instructional framework, and Danielson's framework for teaching, two of the leading educational researchers in this area. And so we began to develop our appraisal framework of 2025. Up here, you'll see the board policy 40608, and we really focused on the board's purpose of teacher evaluation. You can see it on there. It's to improve instruction, guide staff development activities, and make employment decisions. And so with those three purposes in mind from the Board of Education, we developed 3 outcomes that the committee hoped to reach. The first one, to define a Bennington instructional model. What is good in teaching and learning in Bennington? What's unique to us? And the second thing was develop performance rubrics to rate our teachers on their performance based on that instructional model. And third, a process for evaluation. And so the first outcome was our instructional model, and you can see the graphic up on the board. It is a circle graphic. And we defined 8 practices that we thought were most important to teacher and student success in the classroom. You can see it's a circle model because they're all interdependent and connected. And if one of those pieces is left out, then it decreases the effectiveness within our classroom. And so the B is in the middle because this is the Bennington way. This is what we find most important for teaching and learning in Bennington. I'm going to go into a little bit of those 8 components. The first 2 are the learning environment and the learning objective, and that helps set up the classroom. And you can see under each one of those components, we had specific indicators. So within the learning environment, we talked about student relationships, student experiences, collaborative learning environment, routines, procedures, and conduct, and student ownership. All those were important for the learning environment. And I'm not going to read every one of those indicators to you, but then we talked about the learning objectives. The next thing talks about the planning and preparation. Lesson design and focused instruction are the major components, and then under each of those components are the indicators we would look for. The next two talk about delivery of instruction, a gradual release of responsibility and active learning for our students. And you can see those indicators. And then finally is monitoring and feedback and assessment, an important component to our instructional model. Stacy, if you'll hit that. So we dug in even deeper. We have the 8 components of our instructional model, and under those, then we have the indicators. And Stacy, if you'll keep going down. If you would click on one of those, the 8 components, the learning environment. We further defined so our principals knew what to look for in the classroom when they're evaluating teachers and what it looked like for students to be experiencing those indicators in the classroom. And so we took the component, the learning environment, and then the indicators, and we did teacher evidence and student evidence. And we broke it down for each one of those 8 components, making sure we had clear communication and expectations about it throughout our system. Yeah. All right, the second part of this is the performance rubrics. And you can see that the 8 components of our instructional model are also represented in our rubrics. We have the learning environment, the first 2 components of our instructional model, but planning and preparation, instruction, assessment, and then finally, a professionalism. We developed 5 rubrics to rate our teachers on each one of those indicators. A change from our 2018 to 2025 is we used to only have 4 evaluation rubrics. When we did our background information and looked at best practice, we decided we were missing an important component of instruction and learning, and that's assessment. So this time we added an assessment rubric, and so that would be a change for this year. Some other changes we made were 4 performance levels. In the old 2018 appraisal model, we only had 3. We had exemplary or exceeds, we had meets, and then we had did not meet standards. We thought there was a level missing between meeting a standard and not meeting a standard, and that was developing. We think teachers can be developing, and that's where our professional development comes in place, and so we wanted to mark them developing. If a teacher would mark does not meet standards, that would put them, we would work with HR and put them on maybe a development plan, a plan of assistance is what we call it in education. But we do feel like they can be moving towards developing to be effective. And so we did add that column to our appraisal rubrics. And then you can see there's 1 at the bottom for each one of our rubrics. Something else we added was words that describe. So you'll see under exemplary, consistently meets, under effective, generally, demonstrates effort, under developing, and fails to under there, to clearly help our principals define and rate our teachers in the classroom. All right, so the last outcome that we wanted to do is have our total appraisal framework and the steps we would go through so teachers knew what was expected of them and how we would evaluate them through the year. It is required to give your staff annual notice where they are on the evaluation or appraisal cycle. And so every year our principals have a meeting and let our teachers know where they're at in the cycle. There is 2 cycles that is defined within our framework. It is a probationary teacher and a permanent tenured teacher. And so a probationary teacher is in their first 3 years of within our system, of teaching within our system. A permanent is after year 4 of employment. You have the option to become permanent. And then when I say the option, if there was any concerns with that educator, we maybe would keep them in probationary status. All right, there is a difference between a probationary teacher and a permanent teacher, and you can see that our probationary teachers receive 2 formal evaluations during the year, and that is for a full instructional period. They also receive 4 formal walkthroughs. After year 1, they create a professional learning plan, and what that does is address our professional development. They take areas that their principal gives them for areas of growth within the summative, and they make a plan to improve. And so that addresses, like I said, the professional development piece of that. Our permanent teachers are a little different. Once you hit permanent status in year 4 and thereafter, you're formally evaluated in a 3-year cycle, and you receive 1 formal evaluation for a full instructional period. You also receive an overall summative when you're in that 3-year cycle. Every year you still continue to receive 4 informal walkthrough observations and are provided written feedback on those, and you develop your professional learning plan every year, which you'll hear us call it a PLP. All right. Anytime you develop a new process or initiative, the implementation is very important. So the committee developed a plan for implementation. The first thing we have to develop our administrators and their understanding of the new staff appraisal process. And so on June 4th and 5th, we're bringing in a trainer from our ESU that worked directly with Charlotte Danielson, one of the leading researchers in this area, and she will work on collaborating and with our principals for common language, giving feedback, how do you write up a strong observation, what do you look for in that appraisal process. And then we'll introduce it to our staff, which we have already introduced to our staff the instructional model. They were very excited about it, and we introduced it. But this will be an ongoing process and a focus of our professional development. And then when we're back to school sessions, we will work on the appraisal system and helping them understand the process they'll go through and what the expectations are. We have developed a professional development plan for next year, each quarter focusing on one of the 8 components, or focusing on 2 of the 8 components each quarter, focusing on professional development. So in quarter 1, we will do some professional learning on learning environment. What does that look? What are the indicators? What are the expectations when a principal goes in there? What they're looking for, and learning objectives. And you can see the next quarter 2, 3, and 4, how we have that laid out. And then finally, we'll be ready at the beginning of the year to implement this pending board approval. Part of our process also was NDE had to first approve this, so this has been sent to NDE, our rubrics and the framework and our instructional model, and they have approved, but the next process would be asking for board approval so we can implement it in the fall of 2025. All right, I want to go back to our purpose and the purpose statement of the board, and our board policy was teacher development, which we think we addressed, improved instruction. Defining that instructional model was very important for us, and to focus what we're looking for and what we value most in the classroom. And then what we're always trying to do is retain and hire quality educators. And we think the system has addressed those 3 purposes that the board set forth. I just want to leave you, we know the most important component to anything is that teacher in the classroom. And so with that Japanese proverb, better than 1,000 days of diligent study is 1 day with a great teacher. And that's what we strive to aim for, is that children have access to great teachers. And we think they already do, but we think this appraisal process will also guarantee that even more. Any questions for me?
So this was back in 2018. How long was the one in place prior to this one? Not to put you on the spot, no, I didn't know if you knew by chance.
I do tend kind of, when I came in 19 years ago, there was no formal appraisal process. And so Stan Turner, the high school principal then, we, the only elementary principal, did what we thought was right. We observed teachers, we wrote them up, we gave them feedback, but there was no rubrics to follow. And so through that process in year 2 well, Chad came and he was part of the process. So when I was 3 years into it, so gosh, I'm gonna date myself, in year 16 and I'm not doing the math, we developed rubrics.
Okay.
And so that was in place for, I'd say, about 11 years, and then we revised it, the math's not right, probably 7 years.
All right, yeah.
And then in 18, we revised, and now we thought it was time again to revise. So it's come a long way in the 19 years I've been here.
Oh, that's very good. Anybody else have any questions?
I just want to add, this is something that the curriculum committee has seen several times. We've talked about throughout the process. We definitely worked with them getting to before it got submitted to the state to see if it was appropriate or not. And so I want to say thank you to our curriculum committee for giving input and helping through the process as well. And obviously, Dr. Tyndall and her team have put a lot of work into this thing.
Yeah, for just, this was one of the first things being on the board I was asked to do is look through and review this with the curriculum committee, so I appreciate the diligence and the work that's been put into it. It's fun as you click through and you see like that this leads to this many things, then this leads to this many things, like if, you couldn't be any more clear with what expectations are, and I think our educators will appreciate that.
Good, thank you,
Good job.
thank you.
There's a motion.
I move to approve the Bennington appraisal framework as presented.
Second.
Christie, thank you, Joe. Roll call, please.
Joe?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, we will kind of let some other dates out here for a regular meeting, April 14th, for a board meeting at 6 o'clock here. Committee meetings, curriculum and mechanisms, March 10th, 5:15, policies, March 24th at 5, and major important date tomorrow for this district. So, absolutely. All right, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Christie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again.